I told my wife to marry her therapist because I'm done with our marriage. After our first son was born, my wife decided to stay home instead of going back to work. Everything seemed fine at first, but around 6 months we started noticing things. Our son wasn't hitting his milestones like other babies. His first doctor said not to worry, that every kid develops at their own pace. But my wife was convinced something was wrong. She pushed me to get a second opinion. The new doctor gave us these evaluation forms to fill out at home. My wife completely freaked out over them. She said she was too scared to answer the questions because what if she answered wrong and messed up the diagnosis? So I tried filling them out myself, but I needed her help because I was at work all day. Some questions were like, how many times per day does your child do this? And I had no idea. She got so frustrated with me, saying I wasn't being supportive enough. Our son was diagnosed with autism right before he turned 2. That's when the doctor suggested my wife see a therapist because parents of autistic kids sometimes struggle. That's the last time I saw the woman I married. She changed completely after starting therapy. Everything became about what her therapist said. She started talking in this weird therapy language all the time, acting like her therapist was some kind of guru. Then the crazy accusations started. When our son was 3, she told me her therapist said he was emotionally abusive because he intentionally withholds affection. He was 3 years old. I canceled a date night once after she called me a loser, and her therapist apparently said that was emotional abuse. I told her I wasn't in the mood for sex after we had a huge fight, and her therapist said I was sexually abusing her by punishing her. I suggested she go back to work so we could afford better care for our son, and that was financial abuse. One time I was sweeping up broken glass and put my arm out to stop her from walking into the kitchen, and that was physical abuse. Our son accidentally kicked her during a meltdown when he was 5, and her therapist said that was physical abuse too. Everything was abuse. Everything. Then my wife wanted to have another baby. I thought it was a terrible idea. We were already struggling with money, and our older son needed specialized care, but she wore me down and we had the baby anyway. That's when things got really bad. After our second son was born, my wife started treating our older son like he didn't exist. She only focused on the baby. I had to cut back my hours at work to handle drop-offs and pickups for our older son, but we couldn't afford it. I found him an after-school program so I could work full-time again. I told my wife it wasn't fair to ignore our older son just because the baby needed attention. And it wasn't fair to me either, because I never got to spend time with the baby since I was always taking care of our older son while she had the baby 24/7. That's when she said something that made my blood run cold. She told me her therapist said that in a way our autistic son actually killed her first baby because he's the disease that replaced him. I completely lost it. I told her I don't care what her therapist thinks. She's neglecting our family and it needs to stop. She said her therapist told her that neglect is a weaponized term. I looked her in the eyes and said, marry your therapist then, because I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. She started screaming that I can't talk about her therapist like that I was trying to alienate her from her support person, and that was abuse. I called my lawyer friend to get a divorce attorney recommendation. He told me I was being a jerk for insulting her therapist, that therapy is important and it's not the therapist's fault my wife is neglecting our kid. But this therapist destroyed my marriage and turned my wife into someone I don't even recognize. Now I'm filing for divorce and my wife is telling everyone I'm abusive for not supporting her therapy journey.